Hello again, and welcome to Void Signal. I'm your host, Brian Prime, and today's guest is Serena M, a horror scholar and enthusiast you may recognize from Dark Force Fest, where she hosted the panel Goths Love Horror. After seeing how deeply and intelligently she approaches the genre, I knew I wanted to bring her on for a longer conversation. So we talk about what makes horror powerful, how the genre has evolved in recent years, the films that challenge us most, and why dark stories can still bring people together. If you like your horror thoughtful, subversive, and unsettling, then this one's for you. Void Signal's intro is courtesy of Processor. Special remix for this episode by Mortal Realm. You can check out more music by both in the episode description or search Processor Mortal Realm on any streaming platform. You can also visit processor2.bandcamp.com or mortalrealm.bandcamp.com for more music from either of them. Void Signal is ad-free, powered by people, and produced for the enjoyment of humans like yourself. If you've gotten a smile or some moments of entertainment, please consider visiting voidsignal.net or patreon.com/voidsignal to help support the continued development of the Void Signal project. It helps a lot and is deeply appreciated. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration. Now on to the chat with Serena. If you are going to Dark Force this year, please say hello, and I look forward to seeing you at all the panels and things I'm going to be on. Until next time, stay safe and stay loud. Welcome to Void Signal. I'm your host, Brian Prime. My guest is Serena. If you were at Dark Force Fest this past year, you might have caught her panel on Goths Love Horror, which I was honored to be included on and had a wonderful time participating in. I wanted to have you on the show just because I've interacted with you a little bit, and after hearing you speak during your panel at Dark Force Fest, you are certainly a person who knows a lot about horror films, which is a thing that I also love. And you struck me as somebody who had things to say about it, which it seems that you do. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, making this work. And yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to have you on my panel as well. I think we did great work together.
Yeah, agree. I was happy with how it turned out. And I wanted to be especially mindful of not saying too much or interjecting too much because you had such insightful and thoughtful things to say. So it was a very pleasant give and take. Can you tell me a little bit about what brought you to want to do the panel and where this love of horror was born from?
We'll start where the love of horror was born from, because that kind of leads directly into the panel itself. I've always been drawn toward films that are intelligent and that are different, that offer something more than just your average popcorn fare. Not that I don't enjoy some of those, because I absolutely do. I want to say that my gateway to horror was actually David Lynch. I saw Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive at way too young of an age. But I didn't get the opportunity to have much of a childhood personally, but David Lynch was my gateway into horror and horror adjacent films. When I saw Blue Velvet for the first time, I was like, oh, this is what a film is supposed to be. And that kind of led me on a deeper path toward seeking out not just horror, but things that are horrifying without necessarily fitting genre tropes, like slashers and B-horror, things like that. I actually came to relatively later in my horror journey. I think because Chucky scared me as a child so bad, if I'm being honest. Of course, now I find him hilarious. But yeah, no, I distinctly remember being in a row home of someone that my mother was on a date with, and because she was a single parent, it was just me and her. And the guy had a Chucky doll on display, and it's absolutely terrifying me. I was 4, of course. But my gateway to my love of horror, again, going back, was David Lynch. That eventually evolved into me finding Pier Paolo Pasolini, Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, and inevitably led to Pascal Laugier's Martyrs and that whole subgenre of New French Extremity, which tends to be a favorite.
Yeah, and that is quite the journey to take. But then what led you to suddenly decide, I want to do a panel about this?
So one of the administrators for Dark Force Fest had posted on Facebook in their group, what kind of panels would you like to see? So I thought, what would I want to attend if I were at a goth industrial convention? And I thought to myself, I would want to hear people talk about horror movies, at a convention. like at a Monster Mania or Chiller or Creature Feature weekend. I thought that would be cool if somebody brought that to our little, now big goth industrial festival. And so that was my suggestion. And I just so happened to have friends that commented below my suggestion that, well, you should probably host it because you'd be better. You'd probably be the right person to do this. And I thought to myself, yeah, I suppose I could.
Yeah.
And so I did.
Yeah.
Because if she hadn't have written that under my post, I would have never done it. So thanks, Sammy.
Yeah. Thanks, Sammy. Because I do agree. I actually, not long after you had asked if I would be on it, I remember commenting to other people who were going of like, oh man, if I were not on this panel, I'd want to go see this panel because I love horror films as well. And I really like the sort of discourse around them and the sort of interesting conversation topics that they can bring up because it's such a subversive genre, and our chosen music scene is also a bit of a subversive genre, right? Like it's dealing with themes and ideas that maybe are not the norm.
Great.
Like, goths do love horror movies generally, right? Like most of them do. So it makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you ended up doing it. Because I heard other people afterward talking about like, oh, that was so fun. I had such a good time. And that's the goal for any of this, right? Is like making people have a good time.
Exactly. I was actually shocked when I was setting up in the room and, pacing back and forth. I was concerned. I was like, oh, I'm probably not even going to use the whole hour. We'll just get a small handful of people. And we had a full room and went slightly over time, which I felt bad about the next panel for, but we were having such a great time. It was hard to stop, honestly. I could have gone for another hour.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, totally. I had the same feeling setting up for my panel was like, oh my gosh, people are here already. People are ready for this thing. And, it's gratifying to provide some entertainment and some company to people for a time, especially at a place, I feel like Dark Force West, where you do have the people who come alone and they don't know anybody and they attend a rando panel and sit next to someone who's nice enough to say hello or, strike up a conversation when it's over and be like, oh, this and that, bringing people together is, I think, the part that is what's special about it. And I do think that horror films can definitely bring people together because, the moment I see somebody in like a cool shirt for a horror film or something, like, oh shit, that person is rad.
Oh, hell yeah. Horror is very communal. And when you know, and then you're in. And whenever I spot people with cool shirts, sometimes it always turns into a 15-minute random conversation about cool horror shit. I love those random moments with strangers that reinforce that there's good in the universe. Mm-hmm. And strangely enough, horror does that.
Yeah. Strangely enough. That's a good part to kind of transition into films because I do want to kind of pick your brain about the reason you're here.
Okay.
So in regards to horror that has come out over the last couple of years, where do you see the horror film's place in our current sort of cultural moment versus maybe where it used to be? And do you think that has shifted?
I think we started seeing that shift with 24, Ari Aster, and the more that social media became involved in promotion, horror movies tend to be ripe for viral marketing. And so, the more people share, the more people want to see it, the more people show up. Horror films with small budgets and big ideas that cost very little to make, and suddenly our box office smash it. We saw this kind of starting with Jason Blum and Blumhouse films, then evolve with 24 as the quote unquote elevated horror, if you will. And now we're starting to see more experimentation. Things like Together, something like Barbarian and Weapons that have bigger budgets and better casts. I do see horror getting more Hollywood, but so long as it keeps its sensibilities, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing because it's still keeping outside of your generalized trope that we see in 70s horror films, 80s horror films, 90s horror films, where you have the teen genre of horror. And then, of course, the early 2000s were marred by remakes of classic horror films. And then, overseas, it was different. And that started to bleed over into American culture with horror. So I see that where we are as Hollywood is evolving with that, but also even indie studios seem to be willing to take bigger and better risks. And I like to see that.
Yeah, agree. Talking about major impact on small budgets. This past weekend, I ended up rewatching the original Paranormal Activity. Speaking of a film that punches well above its weight for its budget and still has scenes and moments in it that are chilling and really well executed. And I do agree. I do agree with you overall, too. I do think that horror films are probably reaching the biggest audience they ever have. You know, the thing that makes them special now, I feel, is still mostly the same thing that has always made them special, right? Like the ones that stand out are the ones that really sort of address something in the human psyche or subconscious that just is a little rattling or a little jarring, or, you know, was written or produced or directed or whatever so well that it just leaves this legacy. So yeah, I do agree with that. And I feel like we're lucky to, you know, at this time, like there's been so many good horror films ever since the rise of A24, at least for me. Like that's been like my flavor a lot. And I like horror in new flavors, like the social anxiety horror.
Yes.
Beau is Afraid is probably one of the hardest films I've ever watched in my life. And
oh my God. Can I interrupt you just slightly?
Of course.
Thank you. That is the only film I have ever seen that gave me a panic attack so bad, I had to pause it for about 20 minutes before I could finish it. And it was the end, of course, that final scene. It's just everything building up to it, realizing it was all, spoilers, being puppeteered. And that's all I'll say. It was just like, ooh, that hit me in the mom trauma so hard, like too hard.
Yes.
That being said, I thought it was excellent.
Yes, it's a brilliant movie. I've never seen anything like it, and it is an experience. But of the 2 times I have watched it, as soon as the credits roll, I have to immediately go to sleep. Right. I had to also appreciate, you know, as this unpleasant sort of experience is happening to me, I also had to appreciate that, like, the thing that's happening in this movie right now, which is a phone is ringing and it says it's his mom and he doesn't answer, and it's like, and then it goes to voicemail. And I realized that, like, this is a fairly tame scenario playing out, but my anxiety was through the roof. And I just felt so on the edge of my seat and apprehensive of, like, this movie is affecting me deeply because I have that fear of, like, he didn't answer and now there's a voicemail, so it's going to be worse. And just the way it preyed on my vulnerabilities and my anxieties surrounding that, it was just a wild experience compared to the average horror experience, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think that's also a testament to Ari Aster's masterful direction, because the way that the shots are framed and cut and spliced and color graded all contribute to that mounting sense of tension and dread over something so innocuous as letting a phone call go to voicemail. Kudos to Ari Aster for the anxiety and panic.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Totally.
But yeah, I do agree with you. I am a big fan of Ari Aster for that reason, of, like, showing me things that are unsettling or, you know, make me uncomfortable. And I was remarking, because I just rewatched Midsummer not that long ago, and because we're coming right out of spooky season. So I do appreciate, too, the way he uses people and movement. So, like, there's in a lot of his films, it'll be like there's a person just standing perfectly still somewhere, and, you know, just the manner in which they are sort of there but not, or they are part of the scenery almost in their absence of movement, or the way figures will move across a shot or over a space. So threatening.
Agreed. And it's all done in, like, perfect daylight too.
Yeah. And I like that Midsummer plays a lot with gender roles and ideas concerning that.
Well, in the theatrical version.
Okay. I've seen the director's cut.
I don't recommend it because I think the theatrical cut is the cut of the film that one should watch, because, like you're saying, you like the play on the gender roles and the characters. And we were following Florence Pugh's character throughout, and she's our beacon, she's our sympathy. In the director's cut, that's not entirely the case. And it kind of detracts, I think, from where you start to where you end up with Christian. I really did not like that at all. So I'm kind of glad that most of that was cut out, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am too curious now, so I will have to watch it.
It's a very different film.
Okay.
It's a very different film. And
Okay.
it's so interesting that just a few cuts can alter a story in such a meaningful way. I was not pleased with the director's cut at all because it creates more sympathy for Christian, which is what I feel is the antithesis to the point of the film overall.
I feel like what makes it interesting, what makes it shine is the idea of like, he sucks. He's kind of a dick, right? But does he deserve to have these things done to him? Does he deserve to be what is basically sexually assaulted, right? Like he's drugged,
right,
induced into doing this thing. Does he deserve to have that done to him? Does he then deserve to have his ultimate fate? And I feel like the film is a challenge so that when credits are rolling, it is put to you, the viewer, of, do you feel bad? Do you feel happy for this character, or do you feel sad for these other characters who are victims, you know? And I feel like that, at least for me, that's where the movie shined, was that like, we're going to do these things to this character and you're complicit, like you're watching it happen. And how do you feel about it? Do you feel redeemed? Is there resolution here? And that's what I like about it. So I wouldn't want that to be played with too much, I guess.
The ambiguity of emotion of, do you feel bad? Do you feel that this was justified? I think that plays on Florence Pugh's face at the end of the film, the wide range of variable emotion that she's having at the end, where she looks like she's crying and she's inherently sad, but then that smile just very, very slowly creeps. And what does that mean for her? Does she feel justified, or is she just now part of the cult? You know? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and felt very much like I felt nudged, I guess, of like, when the credits roll, you're going to say, good for her. And I want to, right? Like, because I'm like, oh, she's happy. And, you know, I felt so bad for her through most of it, but, you know, at the expense of people who are not bad people overall, just maybe dishonest people. And is that enough to merit their fates? I like anything that kind of challenges me in that way. You mentioned Martyrs, which I have not seen, but in a similar vein of feeling challenged, what is that fucking movie? Funny Games.
Which version do you like better?
I've seen each one once, and that wasn't not enough. I liked the American version.
To
have a film just like challenge you, like, hold up, we're going to pause and I'm going to check if you want to go on. It caught me off guard. And after, I can't say that I want to revisit it too many times, but sort of like Beau is Afraid, it's quite an experience to have a film do this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I liked, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his last name, but it's Michael Haneke's. He's basically just remaking the same film he did in Germany, shot for shot, to appeal to a wider audience. However, I think the actors in the more American version really elevated the material because they were just so good and so believable. I was convinced of the terror in Naomi Watts' face, the resignation in Tim Roth when he realized he could do nothing, complete abject cruelty in the looks you get from Michael Pitt and Brady Corbett. I loved it, and I could watch it often, to be honest, because that's just the kind of pattern of what I find interesting. I find the psychopathology of man's inhumanity to man fascinating. So I love films that challenge you in that respect. And I don't necessarily feel challenged by it. It's very strangely entertaining for me in the weirdest and craziest of ways. My spouse would just call me an edgelord, and he's probably not wrong. I'm not going to lie. To insert humor in it and actually make you laugh and then you feel disgusted for laughing, I like that very much. It appeals to me greatly.
Agree. Because again, it comes back to being challenged, and it is 100% okay if you tap out.
Oh, yeah.
There are films that I've sat down to watch and get, 20, 30 minutes into it, and something occurs that I just, I can't do this. I got to tap out. Everybody kind of has their limits and pressure points, I guess.
Yes. I don't really tap out on much. I've watched Irreversible multiple times. I used to use it as a litmus test for new friends. I've seen a Serbian film all the way through. That is not a recommendation by any means. But the one film I tried watching and I tapped out on it, this is going to sound a little odd. Tigers Are Not Afraid.
No, I have not, but it is on my list of like, I was planning to watch this.
It's very good. Don't get me wrong. It's on Shudder, and I think the child abuse just got like, because it's psychological and it's abandonment was just, it was too overwhelming for me. I couldn't handle that. I tapped out 3 years ago and never went back. I would love to revisit it, but I think there's another one. Playground, 2016, Polish.
Not familiar at all.
It is based on the James Bulger murder case. So everybody Wikipedia that. I'm not going to give it away. You're watching the story of these different groups of children and just kind of how terrible their lives are. And they all interact at school. And, you know, there's a level of kids being kids kind of cruelty escalates to the worst possible place. And the final shot is the penultimate climax of the film. And even though it was very tastefully done, it was a very long shot that wasn't exploitative at all, but you could hear everything that was happening. And that was unbearable for me. I applaud the director for making that film because he did such a great job with it. It's a really, really good film. It's very interesting, but I could never revisit it, ever. I didn't quite tap out, but I had a blanket over my head and my ears covered. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I guess that's tapping out.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't recall the name, but there was a Malaysian film or Southeast Asian film of some kind, horror film about demonic possession of a young girl. I was into it. I was like, this is really good. This is really cool. But then hits a particular scene with like some dog danger that was way too much for me. And I just had to immediately like, oop, we're going to stop and I can't finish this. Everybody has their different limits. And sometimes it's fine, right? Yeah. Like Toxic Avenger, like, absolutely. Oh, the dog is shot with a shotgun and it slides across the floor and it's ridiculous, right? Like, okay, yeah. I can overlook that, but like something that looks a little too real or looks a little too lifelike, ooh,
yeah,
gotta stop. And you know, we mentioned Funny Games, and that was one that, that was very quite lifelike. And yeah.
Did you see The Innocents 2021, a Norwegian?
No.
Or Swedish? I think it's Norwegian. Yeah, so a great concept. It takes place like an apartment block, and it's basically just about all of these children that are kind of like the equivalent of what we would consider a latchkey kid, but they're a little bit younger. A latchkey kid should be. And they start to develop like psychic powers, like they can start moving things or start setting things on fire. And some of them are very playful with it. And then it becomes, some of them are using it to be cruel against one another. And there is a cat scene. I had almost completely forgotten about that scene until it came up on Reddit recently. In a thread, somebody was talking about what horror movie could you not finish, and a few people had said that one, and I remember thinking, I had that on a 48-hour window and I watched it twice because it was really good, but I had forgotten about the cat scene. Yeah. I think I blocked it out, but yeah, sure, that was a very, very lifelike and very uncomfortable. I think I looked away from the screen both times I watched it.
Yeah. What is something, is there a film or two that you've seen recently that you just feel like is, because you watch a lot, and I trust your expertise and judgment on this. Is there a film or two that you've seen recently that gets you excited, that makes you say, hey, stop what the fuck you're doing. This is what you need to sit down and put in your eyeballs?
Yeah, not for the faint of heart, but I think Bring Her Back is the film of the year. I don't think there's anything that's going to beat that for me. From first frame to final credit, I was completely enraptured by the story. I wanted to know more about the lore behind it. I was completely invested in these two kids in front of me, and Sally Hawkins was just so incredibly menacing, but ultimately, though you can't condone anything that she's done and you vilify her for it, you also kind of understand. It's a very, very heavy film about grief and trauma and loss but it's just done so well. These Filippo brothers, they get me every time. I loved Talk to Me. I think Talk to Me is one of the best horror films of this century.
It is excellent.
Yeah, it is.
Something about the violence in that movie is so visceral and sudden and unsettling.
It reminded me of Green Room.
A lot
it's like a punch to your gut.
Yes.
It comes out of nowhere and it just hits you really, really hard right in the stomach.
Yeah.
Especially the Riley scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that's been in your ballpark?
Yes. I really loved Weapons. Weapons and Barbarian are two different films that have a similar flair to them, I'll say. But I really loved the narrative structure of Weapons, and it went to a place that I didn't expect. And it takes a lot to surprise me, and that film very much surprised me. I had such a blast with it too. It was so much fun because I'm a parent with a child relatively the same age as Alex. I'm not going to lie, I got a little panicky when we got to his story because, oh my God, like I can viscerally feel the powerlessness that he felt. And I could only imagine how his parents were feeling, especially his dad, who he had like a great relationship with, it seemed, to be paralyzed in his own body and not be able to protect his child. That got me. And I was not expecting that. But of course, the ending was just a great ball of fun for me. Yeah. I really, really enjoyed Weapons a lot. It's very much up there. Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to the remake of The Toxic Avenger.
I have not seen that. I was so excited for it. And then somewhere along the way, I just forgot it ever came out.
Waiting for this film since it premiered at Fantastic Fest in 2023. And I'm like, when's it coming out? When's it getting in distributor? Why don't I have this movie in front of me right now? And then finally, there it was. I went and saw it twice. I did have to travel a little bit to get there, but it was worth it because it fits into the narrative of the film. A certain portion of ticket sales were being donated for health medical debt relief. In addition to just being a love letter to the original, it is actually a legitimately good film, I think. It's funny, it's goofy, it's silly, it's over the top, but there's a lot of weird, fun layers in there and a decent story, a story that probably somebody could relate to. Kevin Bacon just chewed the scenery perfectly. Taylor Page, she's kind of like a rising star. I first saw her in Zola, not a horror film, but she was fantastic in that. And it was nice to see her again. She was a great right hand to what was going on in the story, so to speak. I had a ball with it. I love Macon Blair. I love him in Jeremy Saulnier films, and I love him as a director and writer, and I can't wait to see what he does next. I think he did a great job.
Okay. I will definitely watch it then. So will we see you at Dark Force next year?
That is the plan. I have not seen the call to apply for panels yet. I think last year it was sometime between November and February where they started accepting applications, but I absolutely plan to put my application in and I look forward to getting accepted again. And I have a lot of ideas for what I want to do and what I want to talk about.
Nice. I hope you do. And I will see you there. I will be there as well.
Absolutely.
I have not been announced yet, but I'll be doing Void Signal live again. So if you could make it to come play trivia with us, that would be wonderful.
I'll be there.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad. If you do end up doing the panel, I'm at your disposal.
You're my first call.
Okay.
Yep.
I accept. So I will happily anytime. Okay. Great. So I did want to, before I hit you with the last question of the show, I did want to kind of put you on the spot a little bit. You're a smart person with a lot of personality and character. You were able to carry a panel talking about a thing you're clearly passionate about and clearly knowledgeable about. What plans do you have to sort of use this outlet? I mean, have you considered a podcast of your own or a blog? What's going to come?
I have considered a blog. I have considered a podcast. Right now, I'm in a very busy place with work and that I'm hoping kind of eases up so that I have a bit more leisure time and a bit more time to think and process ideas and maybe start to work toward putting something together. I'm not really an influencer type. I'm not really going to be a to be on Horror Talk or Insta Horror, but I could definitely see myself going down the podcast route for sure.
Okay. I
to
would
be determined.
Okay. All right. I'll accept. I do think
Thank
that it
you.
is my pleasure. I want to go ahead and hit you with the last question of the show. So what is something that you have been enjoying recently? And your answer can be anything: a book, a movie, a TV show, your dog. Just what's something that you're jazzed about?
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you asked that. It's not horror related at all, but I listened to Behind the Bastards podcast and the It Could Happen Here weekly. I think it was last week. They had a series. It's a series on the strange history of lethal injection. And it's hosted by two investigative journalists and authors from Texas that they'll routinely come on and they'll do an investigative piece over a series of episodes. And I really found it fascinating that they went back as far as like from public executions all the way up to lethal injection and what the state of lethal injections are today and just how inhumane it is, which is something I kind of knew existed but never really dived into because it's one of those things that, well, that'll just completely fuck your day up. From an investigative journalist perspective, I really enjoyed listening to their research on it and listening to the different people that they had on to talk about it. Like there was a guy that was a victim of a hate crime after 9/11 and he was shot. And his assailant was jailed. He had committed multiple murders in Texas that were hate crimes. This gentleman survived, lost his eye, and ended up going through quite a bit of medical trauma and debt, but ended up going on a pilgrimage to Mecca where he forgave the man that attacked him. When he came home, he actively worked to try to stay his execution and hoped to get him off of death row, as he was the one that was assailed, the victim here, and he doesn't want to see this man die. And of course, it was Texas, and that didn't happen. He said that he was one of the last people to meet with the person who attacked him. The person who attacked him said, "I love you, brother," to him. And that was just like, woof, woof. Here I am sitting at my desk doing administrative stuff and now shedding a tear. But they did a really great job on that. So It Could Happen Here, Robert Evans, Cool Zone Media. It's good stuff.
Okay, I will check it out. Similar in tone to that, a recommendation I'll make to you based on that. If you've never heard Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, it is I'm not a big podcast person, but it is one that I have listened to a lot. He has these long series about the Eastern Front in the war and one about World War I, which is profound to listen to.
Oh, God, I love that shit.
Yeah, it's really good and covers a lot of the dirt, it's hardcore history. This is how ugly it was. This is how terrible it was. And he, when you mentioned inhumanity to man, that's a thing that he covers a lot. And there's an episode I would recommend to you called Painfotainment. And it's one where he sort of examines the history of public execution and what it would look like now, right? Like if we, challenges people of like, would you go to this thing? And talks at length about how in France, like public executions were all the rage. Like people would stake out good spots and rent hotel rooms so they could see, and all sorts of debauchery and inhumanity and grossness that sort of goes along with that. It's really riveting stuff to listen to, and he's also got a great voice. He's got kind of a Heath Ledger Joker sort of a vibe to him at times.
Yes, I found it. It's behind a paywall, but I'll go through archive.org now.
Yes, by all means.
Thank you very much for the recommendation. I found it immediately.
Yeah, excellent. Wonderful.
Cool.
Well, I always answer the question myself. The thing I've been enjoying recently, actually rewatching the Paranormal Activity movies. They get not great in some of the sequels.
Yeah.
I found myself, by the time the credits rolled on the third or fourth film, I was tired of watching affluent white people get haunted. One of the little spin-offs, Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, follows a couple of Hispanic kids living in an apartment in LA. And
how was that?
It is excellent. Yes.
Okay.
Aside from the first film, I was like, man, I'm finally having fun with this movie series again because the characters are funny and likable and the scares are sudden and it's really good. And I feel like it probably gets shit on because it's sort of a spin-off-y kind of a movie from a big franchise. But it is a hidden gem of a movie. It was really endearing. I had a lot of fun watching it, and it's nice to just sort of take a chance on something and like, oh, this was way better than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I will definitely check it out. I still love the first one.
Yeah.
It was just chilling.
Yes.
I can see it.
Yeah.
And still get a chill up my spine.
Yeah. The being dragged down the hallway, just like, weirded me out.
Hell no.
Okay, well, that is it. Thank you so much for taking the time to come have a chat with me and making this work.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I would be more than happy to do it again sometime if you would want to just do a periodic, let's get together and talk about horror or whatever. I'm down for that.
We could do theme stuff. Pick a movie.
I would be down. Void Signal intro, courtesy of Processor. Visit processor2.bandcamp.com for more Processor, and intro remix for this episode by Mortal Realm. Visit mortalrealm.bandcamp.com for more Mortal Realm, or search Processor or Mortal Realm anywhere you get music. Visit voidsignal.net to help support the creation of more ad-free Void Signal.